Abraham Lincoln in 1859, famous speech of the Wisconsin Agricultural Association. Lincoln said, I call this mudsill theory because he used that term. Lincoln said the British are financing the whole Western movement, and they're attempting to reinstall their class system. And so they send their young sons over to make sure that not a whole lot of attention is paid to ordinary people or people who live in simple homes that have mudsills. He said they're not, according to the British thinking, they're not worth training or worrying about because there's no way they can possibly improve. Lincoln said, look around you. 3/4 of our population has an independent livelihood, and the quarter who doesn't works to put a little stake together to set up on their own and write their own script in life. He said, as a consequence, we don't have proletariat as they do in Britain and Germany and the European nations, and we aren't able to have a factory system where it exists in this country, which is in New England, in the textile industries. A factory will have 30 or 40 employees. They'll usually be young women waiting marriage. They'll be served tea at their machines, and there'll be opera performances staged for just to keep them at the machine, because these independent livelihoods lead to, totally private, independent systems of value. So the British, Russia, I believe, had freed the serfs. Britain and the continent had done this thing. We were going to do it too.
From my understanding, those dry goods like cotton from the South that were produced by slaves were then going to factories in the North, and the factory owners in the North figured out that the slave owners were paying too much overhead. It cost a lot to keep a whole family fed, etc. And there were letters exchanged, and they actually discovered it was cheaper. Why not make everyone a slave who doesn't know that they're a slave?
A wage slave.
Right.
And think only about the welfare idea. If you have a plantation family and you require harmony, even though some people are very subordinate, if somebody gets sick or too old to work, you can't, in fact, do the Simon Legree bit and get rid of them, or what happens is morale collapses. So you have to care for them. The discussions on the highest level among northern industrialists, why should we have to support Deadwood here? And we could do that if they were wage slaves. Yeah. And furthermore, people like Count Tolstoy was well aware of the hardcore underneath the romantic arguments, and so were a number of other people. But the public, dependent upon media and pulpits, which were subsidized by the owners, they couldn't find a zone where they could think clearly, or
what they called wage slavery, renting yourself to an owner, was not very different from chattel slavery, what they were fighting the Civil War about. And you have to recall that in the mid-19th century, that was a common view in the United States. For example, it was the position of the Republican Party. It was Abraham Lincoln's position. It's not an odd view that there isn't much difference between selling yourself and renting yourself. So the idea of renting yourself, meaning working for wages, was degrading. It was just an attack on your personal integrity. And they despised the industrial system that was developing, that was destroying their culture, destroying their independence, their individuality, constraining them to be subordinate to masters, there was a tradition of what was called republicanism in the United States. We're free people, the first free people in the world. This was destroying and undermining that freedom. This was the core of the labor movement all over, and including.
There's a reason. There's a reason for this. There's a reason education sucks, and it's the same reason that it will never, ever, ever be fixed. It's never going to get any better. Don't look for it. Be happy with what you got. Because the owners of this country don't want that. I'm talking about the real owners now. The real owners, the big wealthy business interests that control things and make all the important decisions. Forget the politicians. The politicians are put there to give you the idea that you have freedom of choice. You don't. You have no choice. You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking. They don't want well-informed, well-educated people capable of critical thinking. They're not interested in that. That doesn't help them. That's against their interest. That's right.